Hello students, Mr. John here. Welcome to Chapter 14, Lesson 2. This lesson is a bit on the shorter end. We're going to talk about the conditions of the working man and working woman in the mid-1800s. They were not good. We're also going to talk about African Americans in the North, and then we'll move on to the growth of cities and touch on immigration, which is actually a hot topic of right now. Before we get started, I have this slideshow I found on YouTube of factories in the late 1800s. Now, we're in the mid-1800s, but I couldn't find any slideshows on that, and not a lot really changed between those time periods. The main point is conditions were bad, and you'll see that in this slideshow. Kids working, they're all dirty, and it's not good. There's more kids. So, we'll start with conditions as a factory worker. We learned about the factory system in the last lesson, and some even before that in prior chapters. Factories brought people and machines together, doing specific tasks to make products quickly and cheaply. That sounds great, right? Not really. See, as factories developed, conditions in factories worsened. The very first factories weren't that bad. They cared about the workers, but as time went on, they essentially cared more about profits than the workers. So by 1840, the average workday was almost 12 hours, 12 hours long, and 12-hour days are tiring. And tired people make mistakes and have accidents. These factories just weren't very safe, and there's little in the way of safety devices to protect hands and other parts, fingers and toes, from moving machinery. Factories were not kept warm in the winter, so guys or women that worked in factories in the winter, they had to deal with the harsh cold as well. Now, children worked the same hours as everyone else, so 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. They tended machines and worked in mines. There were initially no laws regulating any labor, let alone child labor. There were calls to regulate child labor or make it illegal, but this did not happen for a very long time. So be happy you were born in such time as these, my students. It's pretty much the best time to be alive in America. Unless you're all teenagers now, you'd be working in a factory for 12 hours a day, 6 hours a week, or 6 days a week. So workers tried to make conditions better. By the 1830s, they began to form unions. Skilled workers formed trade unions. So trade unions are groups of skilled craftspeople, typically all within the same trade, such as carpenters or, say, gunsmiths or something like that. In 1830s New York, the General Trade Union held a strike to limit their workday to 10 hours. 10-hour days are still long days. A strike is a refusal to work to put pressure on employees to meet demands. Going on strike was initially illegal, but a court ruled it was legal in 1842. Despite that small victory, it took workers years and years to earn more rights. So let's say, an example of a trade union might be like, say, a teachers union. Let's say me and the teachers decided, here at PALX, we don't have a union. We're not unionized. A lot of teachers are unionized in public schools. But let's say we had a union and we want Hot Cocoa Mondays. And we really want Hot Cocoa Mondays, so we go on strike. That's basically us we just refuse to work until management gives us our hot cocoa on Mondays. That would be an example of a strike. But usually it's for things more important than Hot Cocoa Mondays. It's things like shorter working hours, like, hey, 12-hour days are ridiculous. We're not going to work until you give us 10-hour work days. More often than not, now in modern times, people strike for things like higher pay, more benefits, or they strike because benefits are going to be cut, things like health care, stuff like that. So strikes and unions are still something that are very relevant today. Moving on, let's talk about African Americans in the North. So even though slavery had mostly disappeared from the North, blacks were not without trial and tribulation. They faced prejudice and discrimination. Basically, people did not have a good opinion of African Americans, and often for no particular reason. And as a result, they were treated unfairly. Being treated unfairly would be that discrimination part. For example, even if they were free, black men most often could not vote. They just weren't allowed to vote. Many times public services were denied. For example, they had their own schools or their own hospitals. They could not go to a white people hospital or a white people school. Most free African Americans lived at or near poverty in the mid-1800s, but there were some success stories. For example, Samuel Cornish and John V. Russwurm founded the first African American newspaper in New York City. It was called Freedom's Journal. In 1835, Macon B. Allen became the first black man to become licensed to practice law. There he is, Macon B. Allen. I like his beard and his mustache, and it's a nice suit. Quickly on women workers, the ladies faced, of all ladies, all women at the time faced discrimination as well. They were oftentimes paid half of what men were paid, and men would not let the women join the unions. Women began to organize, however, on their own. For example, Sarah G. Bagley formed the Lowell Female Labor Reform Organization. It was her union, and they made a petition in 1845 to work 10-hour days instead of longer days than that. It did not meet with success, but it led the way for later union, particularly women union movements. Moving on to the growth of cities. Most factories were built in the north, and many of them were built in cities. As a result, city population began to grow quite a bit. That movement from rural to urban areas is called urbanization. I can't remember if we've gone over that before, but we certainly will. Urbanization. Towns located on rivers grew into cities as a result of increased traffic of people and goods via things like the steamboat. So what was sort of a river town turned into a river city. Places like St. Louis, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Louisville all grew into important cities on steamboat routes. Here's Pittsburgh right there. Look at all those steamboats. Between 1840 and 1860, immigration to the United States grew sharply. The largest group came from Ireland as a result of the potato famine, which is linked here. Basically, a whole lot of people they survived on potatoes in Ireland. There were a lot of poor people, and potatoes were easy to grow and cheap, so a lot of people ate a lot of potatoes, and so when a funky fungus killed all the potatoes, the Irish folk began to starve, and as a result, a lot of them moved to America. The second largest group of immigrants was Germans. They came between roughly 1820 and 1860. They left Germany to escape political upheaval, and some just wanted a fresh start in new land. It was among this group that my forefathers, the Yunt family, came to America, and I could not find any pictures of them online. We have hard copies, so here's me and my brother when we were babies, 31 years ago. Okay, the influx of immigrants brought with them their culture and ideas, which in time would help shape the American culture that we have today. However, not everyone was happy about this at the time. There's a group of people in the 1840s and 50s that began to resist immigration called nativists. The nativists thought these new people were a threat to the American way of life, and that they brought crime, disease, and problems like that into the country. They also feared that these immigrants took American jobs. The natives actually ended up forming a political party in 1849 called the Know Nothing Party, called such because a member, when asked about the party, would say, "I know nothing." So they were called the Know Nothing Party. The party changed their name to the American Party in 1854. And that's where we're going to call it for the day. That's the end of the lesson. If you go ahead to the next page, you'll see a 5-question quiz worth 10 points. You get 2 attempts as usual. That is it for today. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, have a wonderful day, students.